Welcome to the Paisans podcast. We're your hosts, the brothers from other mothers, Dante, Dave, and Sark. Join us as we talk about current events, our wives, kids, or whatever else life is throwing at us this week. With the Paisans, you're with family.
Well, we were talking in our chat thread about this Howard Stern thing, and we had been talking for a while about wanting to have a conversation about what happened to Howard Stern, basically. And I was amazed in the last couple of days, in the last day, at how many articles I saw today and how many posts I saw about it, people all posting about this. It's not clear to me exactly what happened. Like, they're saying that his show's been canceled. I mean, I think that just means like he didn't come up with a new contract with SiriusXM. They're not gonna pay to keep him around.
Everything I've read is that he finished out whatever is left on his contract, and they're just not renewing it. So I mean, It's, I guess, technically canceled, but
yeah, what does that mean?
I mean, it's not like he's not gonna. I mean, if he wants to do something, he can do something after this. I'm sure. I mean, he might not get hired by a radio station, but he could start a podcast, right? Him and Robin could do it their own show if they wanted to. He's a big enough name. I mean, I think part of the reason why he's not getting picked up again is his ratings are dropping. So who's going to listen to his podcast might be the thing, but I'm sure he could get sponsors if he needed to. And
I agree.
And he could just do his own show, do whatever he wants.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what he ends up doing. I mean, his history is that he is very diplomatic on the air insofar as he won't. Well, I guess that's not true. When he went to SiriusXM, he became really outspoken about going to SiriusXM and about how bad it was and why he wanted to leave. But he started doing a whole thing where he wouldn't say SiriusXM, or at the time it was just Sirius Radio, because it wasn't even Sirius and XM were competing at the time. So he was just going. But the reason we want to talk about this, right, is because there's such a long history around Howard Stern, certainly for me. And as we were chatting, you guys were saying, like, I only listen to Howard Stern because of Dante. And I was like, yeah, we got to talk about this today because, I stopped listening to him. It's probably about 5 years ago now. Maybe it's 4 years ago. 5. I had been a listener since 1988. I started listening in 1988, and I was a crazed fan. I woke up every day. I wanted to hear the beginning of the show, and I listened to the whole thing. I mean, when he was on terrestrial radio, obviously that wasn't always an option. I was going to school and stuff, and there were no replays the way that there are today. But years later, once he went to satellite radio, I was such a devoted fan that I actually got a subscription to Sirius Radio so I could hear him.
In 1988, was he on K-ROCK still? That was when he just started at K-ROCK, rather?
Yeah, it was a couple of years after, but he was at K-ROCK, relatively new at K-ROCK. And he was at K-ROCK till 98, maybe. I mean, I don't remember when he left. I mean, it was well after we were in college. So and I think I was living at Dad's. So call it 97, maybe he left terrestrial to go to Sirius. And it's crazy to me because it's hard to even know where to start. But it really broke my heart when I stopped listening to him because I realized I had been listening to him. It had been probably like 3, maybe even 4 years where I was just like, wow, like he has really changed. When I started listening, he was irreverent and his whole thing was kind of being the anti-establishment guy. Not so much anti-establishment because he was very pro-police. He was very pro like law and order, but he was also, the FCC would certain words he wasn't supposed to say or situations he wasn't supposed to say. And as soon as he found out that they were touchy about a particular thing, he would go and dance on the line, and it made for hilarious radio. I mean, some of the clips of things that they did at the time, and I won't sit here and retell them. I mean, I was just going through YouTube today and I saw post after post after post about this. And some of them did a fantastic job of retelling very specific things that he had done in years past. All of it to be edgy. And his whole point was Hollywood and these celebrities take themselves way too seriously. And I'm going to show you that they're all regular people, and they get away. They do things that are despicable, just like everybody else does, and they get away with it because they're celebrities, and nobody challenges a lot of them on the things that they do. It's like we all pretend to sweep it under the rug and nobody talks to them about it. And he would challenge them. He would, always under, in the attempt to try and be funny, not always eloquent. In fact, a lot of times it was really crude. And there were a lot of things he said that I didn't find particularly funny because they were just sort of elementary in their humor, just like really kind of like, third grade humor. Like I don't find farts inherently funny. It's like, not to say that it could never be funny, but it's just like the fact that people fart is like, okay, whatever, like it is what it is. I don't find that inherently funny, but some people think it's hilarious, and fair enough. So,
well, and at that time he was pretty much the only person doing it that we really had access to. It may not have been the funniest thing, but the fact that he was just doing outrageous things like that morning after morning, and was really the only person that was in mainstream, any type of mainstream media.
You're right. Well, nobody was talking about those things. Like nobody said fart back in the day. Now it's on newscasters will say it like it's not a big thing. And a lot of that is actually owed to Howard Stern.
It is. Yeah.
But he would do, he would talk about like the MTV Video Awards would be on one day, and then he'd talk about them the next day. Robin would go through it in the news, and he would talk about, this celebrity or that celebrity. And almost always he was trying to pull them apart, that they take themselves too seriously. And, Madonna, and my goodness, he would tear into Madonna and just like, who cares about this woman, and everybody, so on and so forth. And that was his career for like 20 something years, in the late 90s and then into the early 2000s, Jackie Martling left the show and Artie Lange joined the show. And in my opinion, those are the peak years. The show was so funny. This was mostly, they were on K-ROCK with Artie, and then they moved to satellite with Artie.
That's right.
Right. Those were some of the funniest things I'd ever heard. Like it was just, And it's funny because I can look back and I can tell you truthfully what I found funny was Artie. I actually thought Artie was really funny. Really,
Artie's hilarious.
He is hilarious.
So great,
funny
to this day.
And I hope he's doing well. Honestly, shout out to Artie Lange.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, right? Like, God, whatever happened, he had the podcast and like everything else with Artie. Like one day he just ghosts.
I saw him quoted in one of those articles that we were trading around.
It's just talking about how Artie, from Artie's perspective, was when he left the show, kind of just saying how things had changed and it was a complete 180. And he was making these comments in like 2017 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Which honestly, reading that article, it shocked me to realize that Artie had been off that show for, at the time of that article, like over 10 years. So, I mean, he's been off that show for 15 years, which is hard to believe, but that's a completely different topic.
Yes. Well, it is and it isn't, right? Like, I don't know what was going on in the show for all the years. Like, there was years where Artie was there and things were obviously really good. Somewhere along the line, something happened. Artie started doing heroin again. And I think that he talked about that since. So he's since discussed it. And things did start to get tense and weird. Somewhere in there, Howard shifted his entire approach and he decided, instead of being irreverent, he was going to sort of be goofy, but be a little more politically correct. I can't tell you what the years were, but it was like, it started with people who he had a guy named Gary. Now, not Gary Delabate, who is he's Baba Booey, but there's another guy who they called Gary the Retard. And Gary was like, he didn't have Down syndrome. He has like a low IQ, and I think he had some type of mental retardation. Like, that's how they used to refer to it. I don't know how else you would refer to it. Well, he stopped calling him that. He started calling him Gary the Slow Adult. And he started like going with these like politically correct nicknames for these wackos who would come on the show. You know, and I say wackos, they're part of the whole what they call the whack pack. He had a whole group of people, most of whom had either behavioral issues, emotional issues at the very least.
Yeah.
Many of them had genuine mental or physical issues, and he called them the whack pack. And he made fun of them. I mean, he brought them on and gave them a certain sense of celebrity and sort of made them feel desired or needed in some respect or another. But he also had a lot of fun at their expense. And look, most of the time I was pretty entertained by it. most of the time they were willing participants, willing enough, you know.
I mean,
So I was okay with
that's
that.
kind of the crux of comedy when you think of insult comedy. I mean, you look back at the roast when Don Rickles was out there, or even nowadays Jeff Ross.
Mhm.
They make fun of people, but you can tell that deep down there's a care there. There's like some sort of charm or admiration about it that makes it funny and acceptable, and like the people are okay with it, really. Now, I mean, maybe in Stern's case, maybe some of these people didn't pick up on some of it.
No, they did. They knew.
Yeah, okay.
They knew, and that they were addicted to the airtime. They were addicted to the airtime, so they didn't care really how badly he spoke to them. And fair enough, but I mean, it's all like they're all grown adults. They're all doing what they want to do, and for the most part, I was really a big fan of it. It's just that he took a turn somewhere in there. You know, he took some kind of a turn, and everything. Not only did he turn, but he turned like 180 degrees. So where he went from like he would talk about Madonna, like who does this woman think she is, to somewhere in the mid 2010s, like maybe call it 2015, he got Madonna to come on the show, but he recorded the show in the afternoon to do the interview with her, and he sucked her ass for like 2 hours straight. Not even 2 hours, but for like an hour and a half straight. Like just, I mean, my goodness, like her ass was so slathered by the time he was done. It just, what an icon you are, and all the moments you've had, and all these like pre-scripted. I mean, it was cringy. It was cringy. And he started, of course, railing on anybody who was even the slightest bit right-leaning. And then he started going on about COVID, and he started saying, you know, if people don't want to get the vaccinated, F their freedom, and F these people, they're persona non grata. And aren't you the guy who was like all about First Amendment freedom? And it was such a turnaround. And then, you know, I got to the point where the vitriol against, like the vitriol and the propaganda, the vitriol against anybody right-leaning, coupled with the propaganda and the talking points, and just so frustrating to hear him say all these things that, you know, it's like he's only telling part of the story, and he knows he's only telling part of the story, and he just doesn't care. He's repeating propaganda points. And I'm like, I can't believe it, but I've seen this guy just completely sell out. Everything that he once stood against, he has become. And several of the articles we were sharing, you know, said that. And look, you know, he probably had an agreement with SiriusXM. So I'm sure he's out there saying, look, they're not canceling my show. I'm not signing up with them again, which is technically true. That's how he'll frame it. But from what I understand, the reality is that at any given time, he's got less than 150,000 listeners.
Well, I was going to say, the numbers don't lie. What's the viewership? I haven't seen it, but they referred to the viewership really dropping, that he's basically marginalized his audience.
Yes. Well, the people who used to listen to his show were people driving trucks, you know, blue-collar people who wanted to hear about hot girls and irreverence, and they wanted to hear, you know, fart jokes, and they wanted to hear something really lighthearted so they could forget about what they were doing all day long while they sweated to earn a living, you know. So to turn around and become an elitist, living in the Hamptons, from the most part, as far as I know, he doesn't come into the studio. He does everything from his own home studio. He even has guests interview, and they have it sort of configured so that on the show. Now, I can't swear this is true, but from what I can surmise, like they sort of film it as if the people they're facing one another in the studio, but the reality is that he's
I've heard that too,
in his own place.
Now he's in his own place, and only certain people can come in contact with him. Is this like a thing that happened as a result of COVID with him?
He's a germaphobe, and he has been a germaphobe for years. He's a hypochondriac. And he worships doctors. And for all the years I listened to the show, he worships doctors. Doesn't matter what, if the doctor said, pull off 9 of your fingers because you got to save the thumb, he would do it. You know, he doesn't care. Whatever the doctor says, yes, doctor, yes, doctor. He's one of these people who completely worships doctors. And so it didn't surprise me. And he runs to medication for everything. And he's convinced that everything is, you know, a death ailment and everything else. And I know he plays it up for the air, obviously. But I think when COVID hit, he legitimately was just like, canceled the show, And it was weeks before he started filming the show again. He didn't want anybody to come into his house because he was supposedly so worried that he was going to get COVID.
I mean, in this one article that we were reading, it's from the City Journal. The author is named Bruce Bauer, Bawer. This is the only thing I've ever read from this guy, so I don't know anything about him. But I mean, this guy details a lot of things that could be turning points for when Howard started to go downhill. And it's about the time that he got married, he got remarried in 2008, around the time Artie left the show in 2009. And then probably the peak was the 2016 election, it seems like. And then probably the final nail in the coffin, from what you're saying, Dante, is COVID. That's what it seems like, right? Like, I mean, all of these events kind of led for him to make this complete 180 shift, and probably was when his ratings started going down, if we're being honest. I mean, I think Artie just leaving the show alone is probably hit his ratings, because I think there became a section of this fan base, and Dante, correct me if I'm wrong, because you would know better, but I'm just taking a guess here, that probably loved Artie so much and probably became listeners because of him, because of his antics and how hilarious he was. And I'll say maybe even hearing about his struggle and rooting for him to recover and be, do better. So once he left, and for whatever reason, I mean, it could be his own personal demons, or it could be because of maybe a shift. I don't know.
Unfortunately, Artie, what he came out later to say was he had been doing heroin for a while and functioning on the show. And there were days on the show where like Artie was falling asleep on the air. And Howard made all of it a bit. So, I mean, it was hilarious. It's like, oh, Artie's, and they would literally like sneak up to him with a microphone. And so you could hear, like you could hear him breathing and like a whistle in his nose type of thing. And Artie's falling asleep. And Fred would play the music of like a baby serenade, like do 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 do. They would just cut film on him, and he'd you're like, oh my God. So, I mean, it was hysterical. It was really hilarious. But I think basically he didn't show up one day, and then he called in with excuses for a couple of days, and they were just like, look, man, I truly believe that Howard was like well-meaning. And he basically was like, you need to get some help, like go get yourself taken care of. Don't worry about coming in here. But he was also like, and I don't need you here anymore, because you're going to, I can't trust that you're not bringing in heroin or shooting up here. God knows what you're doing. So I can understand all that. Like, again, I don't fault the guy for like managing his business. But
at that point in that timeline, though, that you laid out, Dave, he basically gave his wife keys to the show, right? Was she a showrunner?
I don't know if it was his wife. I don't think it was, but there was another woman that he hired. And it was somewhere along the line there. I mean, when he got remarried, from what I was reading in this article, it indicated that he had hit such a level of fame and just being rich. I think at that point he was really living in his house, in his mansion in the Hamptons most of the time. And she was a former model, so I don't know if she was a socialite herself. That part it was unclear, but I mean, I think he really started rubbing elbows with the A-list celebrities right around that time. So I don't know how much of an influence his wife actually had on that, but it seemed like there was a change because of that marriage. Who knows why? I couldn't speculate as to why, and Dante, maybe you know more about that, but I think the woman you're referring to is a different woman that he hired to kind of be a showrunner.
Yes.
Okay.
So I did read something today where somebody was sort of saying that his wife was involved, but I think that that's a confusion. Now, look, I could be wrong. Who knows? She could be Yoko Ono, but I don't know that that's the case. It seemed, at least at this point, I guess I recognize nothing on the air is necessarily as it seems. So who knows? Maybe she was. But Dave's right. There was a different woman that he brought in to help organize and run the show. And you definitely noticed something shifted where the show started being run much tighter in terms of like the segments were short, very in and out, and everything was clearly done in such a way that they could edit it very cleanly later. Whereas the original show was much more organic, almost like this, where it's like, when do we go from one subject into the next? Like, you sort of, everything blends sort of organically. You move from one topic to the next to the next. Right. Whereas it was much more like compartmentalized. Like, oh, for the next 20 minutes, half hour, we talk about this. And we don't get, oh, no, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But now, right now, this and that and the other, like, we stay on topic. And then at a certain point, like, all right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this. Mm-hmm. And then you move on to and it was very tightly run. And again, I'm like, all right, they're running their business. I get that. But he definitely started softening his angle. Now, Dave, I'm looking at this too, right? Because the truth is the show started to get boring. That was part of the problem, is it just started to get boring. In 2017, Lange described the Stern Show as having done a 180. Some said it was his wife. Some pointed to his Marcy Turk, that's the woman, a woman whom Stern hired a few years back to make him, according to a journal, just a bit softer as part of his strategy to get celebrity interviews. And then others were wondering about his daughters, right? Because he's got several daughters who finally came of age. All his daughters, by the way, went to the West Coast to like USC and stuff to get educated, like super left-wing education. He also, by the way, not to be overlooked, is he got divorced. And you know, when he got divorced, up until his divorce, that was when he was the king of all media. He was the king of all media when he was killing it at K-Rock. He wrote the book, King of All Media, and that became a #1 bestseller. This was like 93, 94. And then he had the movie that came out.
He had the movie that eventually came out.
Which was based off of a book also, I think.
It was based loosely. It was based off of the book. It was really a loose biography. Like an autobiography for him. And the reason it worked, the reason people found it charming and that it found like the audience really accepted it, was because it was more like a love letter to his wife.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. It was like him basically saying like, look, you know, here I am doing whatever the hell I can do, but you give me purpose and direction. And
then how many years later, not many years later,
they get divorced.
And he just kind of like brushes it off too.
Yeah. And it was shortly after the movie came out, for sure.
It wasn't that. Yeah. It was like maybe 2 years later. We were in college. We were playing at the Plum Street pub, Mike. I remember looking up and seeing the announcement, Howard Stern's getting divorced. And I was like, what? And I was so disappointed. And one of his wife's main complaints to him, one of the reasons they got divorced, was because she was like, we don't do anything. Like, you never want to leave the house. You don't want to have any fun. You don't want to go out and be social in any way. And I'm not saying we have to be socialites, but I would just like to every now and again leave the house. You're like a shut-in. You never want to leave the basement. Mm-hmm. And he was like, this is who I am.
Yeah,
sorry.
He was admittedly a shut-in. Yeah.
Okay, right. And then fast forward a year, and all of a sudden, he's going out to strip clubs. He's hobnobbing with celebrities and models. And he starts dating. He dated Robin Givens at one point. He was dating there's a redhead, Angie Dickinson. No, not she's Angie Everhart. I think that's her name. Gorgeous, like 5'11" redhead. I mean, oh my God, she is stunning. And then he met, I think, the woman who is now his wife. But it struck me that here he was so dedicated to his wife and devoted to her, and then ends the marriage because he doesn't want to be social. And then the second he's out of the marriage, he decides he wants to be social again to start meeting women. I'm like, it was like the first time I saw him, like, wow, he seems to be doing something very different than what he's saying. And until then, I had sort of seen him as being a person who I would judge by his actions, not really his words. His actions until that time were, yeah, I go on the air and I say outrageous things and I let my id run loose because there's a catharsis there and it makes for great radio. But as soon as the airwaves go off, I go home and I'm dedicated to my wife and I'm like, I'm doing all this to make money to support my family. Like, it felt almost blue collar to me, and I could respect that. So divorcing the wife and being out at the Playboy, with Playboy models and everything else, I'm just like, here it is. And it just seems like it's like that was the turn in my mind, because then he just kept going that direction. And I think you said it, Mike, like you sell your soul in Hollywood eventually. And I don't know how else to explain what that he has become exactly what he used to rail against. He has just become the guy who says the thing. He says the talking points. Don't believe your lion eyes. Just believe what I tell you. And he acts incredulous at the things people say. If you saw his interview with Hillary Clinton, his interview with Kamala Harris, and his interview with Joe Biden, like they're so
It's vomitous.
cringe. It's like, it's embarrassing. I was embarrassed for him. Like I actually had to turn it off. I'm like, I am so embarrassed for him because what a sycophant. There's something very sad about that to me. You know, it's just, I find something sad. It's like, you don't, I guess, don't get to know your heroes too well. Something like that, whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Never meet your heroes
You
in
have
person.
a really good point about his divorce. I was trying to think going into this conversation, like where I thought from where I sat, some of the turning points were. And I maybe equated some of that with his new wife, but not necessarily the fact that, he was single for a time. And all the stories that he started telling on the air just didn't translate. It didn't resonate with his audience. And the stories that he was telling about married life and having to like reconcile the things that he was saying on the air with his wife, or it was hysterical.
I know what you mean, Mike. I think that's really important. You have to be able to relate. And like Howard Stern has been in a place where I couldn't relate, like for a long time. It's like, dude, you're living in the Hamptons. Like, you don't have to leave the Hamptons. Everything is brought to you. All these things you talk about, it's like you don't interact with the real world. And so how could you have an opinion about any of these things, let alone just the politics and everything is just like, you hear him say things. It's just, I don't know how else to say it. It's like, I can't even complete a sentence. It was just so infuriating. And part of the infuriation, what was so infuriating was how sad it was. You know, it's just so sad to me. On a funny note, I found up on YouTube one of these things where Artie, when the peak of the Howard Stern show was the Artie Lange years, man, and Artie telling stories, and Artie Lange singing Biggie Smalls, "Give Me the Loot," is just absolute radio gold. So hold on, I'm gonna have to share this.
On a completely separate note, one of my favorite movies ever is Beer League, Artie's movie about the slow pitch softball team. That is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, honestly. It is so ridiculous, and you could tell he is just a hilarious guy, just based off of the jokes in that movie. But the funny thing is if every time I've heard him talk about that movie, he's like ashamed that he's like, that movie was terrible. I can't believe I made it. And I'm sitting there like, that's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
That's too bad.
The jokes are just amazing.
He's hilarious. I think he is absolutely hysterical. Like he just, everything about his humor is just right up the alley for me. It's just exactly
it's just
what I love.
It's hilarious.
Yes.
He did a movie with Norm Macdonald too. I can't remember if that was Dirty Work or because he did a movie with Dave Chappelle and he did a movie with Norm Macdonald, and I feel like they're very similar concepts. One of them is called Dirty Work, and I think that's the one with Norm.
Yep.
I saw that movie. Yeah.
And that one is also hilarious. I mean, those two guys are just, they're both comedic geniuses, honestly, in my opinion.
But that's got to be one more where, like, I think that was one where, like, it's so low budget and they were just, like, basically, like, seeing what they could get away with. Like, it's so over the top.
We mentioned Don Rickles before. Don Rickles is in that movie, too.
Yes. He's like, and oh my God, he tells Artie he looks like a baby gorilla.
Yeah.
So harsh.
Hold on, I think I could share it here.
Yeah, let's Sark try.
Are you on the Jizzinator?
I think
is that it?
It's the Jizzinator. Yes, apparently it is.
I don't want to screen share the Jizzinator unless I subscribe to him.
Yeah.
Or her. Maybe it's a her.
Could be a her.
Do you know the name Christopher Wallace? They're doing a movie of his life.
Christopher Wallace, is that Biggie Smalls?
That's right. Notorious B.I.G.
I think Artie could play.
Well, he's Notorious. A big, you got to look for those hefty man parts.
Pimp to my hooligans in Brooklyn.
You'd have to sound, Artie.
Based on that, I'd give you the part.
Now I'm in the limelight. cause I rhyme tight. Time to get paid, blow up like the world trade. Born sinner, the opposite of a winner. Remember when I used to eat?
You do it. You could be Biggie Smalls.
I don't see why not.
Blow up like the world trade.
Nice.
They are doing auditions. They say about 100 lookalikes were on hand on Saturday to audition for the role of the slain rapper in an upcoming biopic on his life and death.
My man Imps left for protecting a 9 at my crib. Turned himself in, he had to do a bid.
1-3, he'd be home in the end of 93.
I'm ready to get these papers, G.
You with me?
Why don't you audition?
Motherfucking right. My pockets are tight.
What was funny about this was how she would go through the news and read the news segments, and they would purposely like, okay. And then like they're immediately like, they're going to ignore what she's talking about. She's reading the real news and they're basically ignoring it, not acknowledging anything. And they're just going to keep singing or like doing these bits, taking phone calls. It's just part of what was so funny was that she's reading these stories. You're like, oh my gosh. And you're like, yep. And then Artie just keeps like reciting Biggie Smalls lyrics.
You mentioned it earlier. They really laid the foundation for what like so many of these radio stations are doing today. Not just the podcast, but even still on the air. Like I know, Dave, you listen to sports radio. I listen to the Fan.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I love the Boomer and Geo show. They're on at the time that I get up. I can listen to most of the show. And like, it's not particularly crazy or raunchy or out there, but the format itself is so influenced by what Stern was doing back in the 80s. Right.
Stern definitely created a genre, if you will, for the morning quote unquote shock jock, or I mean, I guess you could say Imus was there before him, but Imus was not nearly on the same level or nearly as shocking. I don't think either.
Yeah. Imus had real problems and whatever.
Yeah.
He was
He
was not the same, but
he actually
you're
got
right.
canceled. He didn't. He actually got canceled. I mean, Stern somehow didn't get himself canceled the way Imus did, but
canceled that way.
Actually canceled.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Imus ended up in a weird situation too. First of all, the guy ended up with cancer, like a real bad cancer, and he had a whole weird thing going on too with this ranch he owned. He owned some ranch that supposedly was for like cancer kids. It eventually came out that like they're bringing these kids there, and they make the kids work the ranch, and
jeez.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that it was like a work camp for children, but it eventually, like, he had to close the place, and it was sort of like, yeah, this feels more like a tax shelter than like a legitimate, charity. And I'm not trying to like besmirch whatever. I don't care about Don Imus, but there was something weird there. And again, Stern managed to fly below it, I suppose, because he never got in trouble. Like, he never got in trouble for drugs or like stupid behavior, or like embarrassing himself in that way. Because again, up until that point, his actions were like, actually, he's leads a pretty conservative life, despite the kookiness that, that people associate with him.
I mean, Stern's ratings were probably, I couldn't even say, but there's so much more than what Don Imus had, I'm sure. So that alone would help him get away with.
Oh yeah.
Towing
he
that
was
line.
Syndicated across the whole country at one point. I mean, and that meant every individual market had to pay him, and and basically he was the morning show for hundreds of stations across the country. And so, that guy's a billionaire.
He had a stretch where he was number one in New York and LA at the same time. I mean, that alone is like, he must have gotten so rich off of that.
Look, it's the end of an era as far as I'm concerned. I mean, like, he may decide to turn around and do a podcast. He's been shitting on podcasts ever since they came around.
Right. Yeah. That's
calling
kind of
them
the ironic
illegitimate.
thing.
Yeah. But it speaks, though, to the fact that he's of the generation where he's the classic. No, the radio is a studio you go to and they broadcast over the air and people listen to it. It's like, that's not what it is anymore, Howard.
Yeah. I mean, he's basically doing a podcast.
Yes.
He's basically doing a podcast. I mean, he's in his own home. He's not even really in the studio with these people. So it's basically a podcast anyway. And it's...
Well, that's the part I don't get, Dave. It's like, okay, he's got the capital.
Yeah.
He could easily turn around and start doing the Howard Stern show publishing a new show every day.
Yeah.
You know, and
Oh,
people,
yep.
I mean, I suppose he could live cast it on
He
YouTube,
could if he wants to. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Whatever. Like he could live cast it directly. He could sell an app if he wanted to. Download the app, you get my show, you get whatever else.
Well, maybe not now because
I
the
was
ratings
gonna
are
say,
probably low.
could've
Well,
But
now
changed
I don't
June
think he has the
1st.
numbers anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but he has YouTube's free. He could. I'm sure he has a YouTube channel, and he could just upload it to YouTube if he really wanted to. If he just wanted
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
the art of interviewing people, and then he can do his, kind of lame interviews the way he wants to do them, and just whoever's still
especially
interested.
if he still wants to be the king of all media.
Right.
What happened to that, right?
Well,
I mean,
he definitely is not that. I mean, the funny thing is that he would trash Joe Rogan constantly for Joe Rogan's show, and now Joe Rogan is the king of media. And
By far.
yeah, it's not even close. But the funny thing is every time Joe brings up Stern, he gives him a lot of credit, props. He's very, like he's like Howard is one of the reasons I like do this. He's not. And he was like, he's the king, and he'll always give him props on that stuff, which is true, even though Stern kind of shits on him and other podcasters too, for that matter. But Joe Rogan is so popular because he's authentic and he doesn't cater to that stuff, and that's kind of what made Stern big.
Part of Stern's thing was to embarrass you a little bit, so it wasn't as straightforward. As Joe Rogan. Like Joe Rogan's not necessarily trying to be funny. He's trying to have interesting conversations, whereas Stern was really trying to be funny. So his goal was to be like, for example, at one point it came out that David Letterman, after he had gotten married, apparently had been unfaithful. He had an affair. He already had a kid. And he basically was not answering any questions about it. But he also wasn't having Stern on. Howard was upset about him for something. So he had somebody who would show up at Letterman's press conferences or whatever and try and ask questions about like why he had an affair. What does he tell his wife about the affair? Things like that. I mean, if it wasn't Stuttering John, it was whoever the next iteration of Stuttering John was. But Stuttering John became famous for going and purposely asking an embarrassing question. Like Stuttering John would have been there to ask the president, why won't you acknowledge the daughter that your son had with a stripper while he was on a crack bender? Like that would have been classic Stern back in the day. And to see him cover up for that type of stuff, that's what is such a gut punch. Stern wasn't necessarily he wasn't really trying to be fair back in the day. But, at the same time, here's the question you'd have to ask yourself. What's the benefit of sucking up to a Madonna? Like, what's the benefit of getting a Madonna interview? Not for nothing, but who gives a shit? Like, nobody's given a shit about Madonna in like 20 years.
Especially when he's already so rich.
That's where you start to believe, like, maybe it really is. He just wants to be loved. He wants to walk around the Hamptons, be loved by these celebrities, get invited to all the big parties, and sit with them and sip champagne while they all laugh at the, I don't know how else to explain it, because to your point, Dave, what is he getting out of it? Like the money can't be the answer. He in fact is giving up, and now as we can see, has given up however much you could calculate to no longer have whatever the straight income he was getting from SiriusXM, because he sold out all the people who don't want to hear Madonna sucked up to. They want to hear somebody ask Madonna a real question, because they figure living in her ivory tower, nobody ever actually reflects reality to her. So if you're a welder or you're, working on if you're a roofer or something, you don't want to hear how Madonna is, such a pioneer and she has endured so much. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I think that working on rooftops in the middle of July heat in Alabama, that's enduring a lot.
A little bit harder.
Yeah, maybe a little bit harder. Exactly. As opposed to like writhing around in a wedding gown at age 70, as you tour the country for millions of dollars. If you're Madonna, it's a joke. Again, it really, I think I started to say this and I probably never finished my point. I would get up every morning and I would listen to the show all day. And when he got the satellite radio, he would, when the show was over, he would start to play it all over again. And I would listen to the show sometimes twice a day. I was like,
I remember
committed.
You were really, really into it.
I tried to get you into it because I was like, it is so funny. I would love to be able to talk to you about it. Dave, I tried to get you into it, and I was religious about it. Like I really was religious about it. And people would say, oh, this Howard Stern, this, and that, the other. Like, not that there were many people who would talk to about it, but if it would come up, I would, oh no, you don't understand. And it's so much more intellectual than you realize. And I mean, I really felt that was true. Like I really thought it was very smart. In many ways, the way that South Park is smart. The way that South Park uses satire, to make you laugh at things. I'll give you an example. He used to have a guy on called a guy named Daniel Carver. Daniel Carver was a proud wizard in the KKK.
Yes. Okay. That's right.
And he would have Daniel Carver come on and wear his clan outfit. And then he'd ask him things like, well, here's like a bunch of Post-it notes with different types of people written on them. Can you put them in put them on a chart who are like the worst, from the worst, like the best to the worst?
I remember that.
And it would be like, Jew, black person, a person who's half black and half white, an Asian person, like all these things. And he's like literally putting them in an order. Okay.
And he's probably given like detailed reason as to why. It's like, well, this person.
Right. And of course, everybody with a brain is laughing because they're like, the funny part of this is to expose the absurdity of this guy's belief system.
Right.
And so give him the mic so he makes a fool of himself, which is exactly what was so brilliant about it. And so I would try and point it out to people like this and that and the other. And somewhere around 5 years ago, I just got to this point where I was like, I realize every day I'm tolerating this. Like he is just going on and just propaganda and saying things. And I was like, I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but not only am I not interested in listening anymore, I have to cancel my Sirius account. I have to do this on principle. And that's exactly what I did. Like I canceled my Sirius account. And, every now and again they'll call. I never answer the phone anymore. But when they, when I called and I said I'm going to cancel, well, what if we do that? They basically offer to give it to you for free for like 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They just want subscribers. They just want the numbers.
I was like, no. I said, I'm telling you, not only do I not want it, I want you to document. I don't want it because Howard Stern has gone off the rails and I do not want to support him anymore. And I couldn't believe this. I was like, it felt sacrilegious. It felt like I was like losing a long-time friend. But at the same time, it was like, but they're gone. Like he's long gone. I don't know what happened to that show anymore. It's just not what it once was. And I'm paying every month to get pissed off. And I was like, forget it. So we haven't even touched on the ultimate insult. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot this. It's been so long. So when he started the show, he was doing 5 days a week. Okay. And then very quickly he stopped doing Fridays. And then a couple of years later, he was doing it 4 days. He did it 4 days a week for like a year, maybe a year, 2 years. And then he renegotiated his contract and there was a whole thing. And basically he started only doing the show like 3 days a week. And then it's all reruns. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This guy's coming in 3 days a week to do the show at this point. And the show used to be, he would get on at 6, very sharp. And the show was supposed to end at 10. And most days he was on till 10:45. Sometimes he'd be on till 11. Well, once this woman came in, it was boom, like a ship. I mean, let me tell you, at 10 o'clock, they were done. They were off the air. So it was like, you're getting, like well, actually, he had commercials. So you're getting about 3 hours and 15 minutes of content each day, which is not something to smirk at, but you're only getting it 3 days a week. And then he gets, I'm not kidding when I tell you, he probably gets 8 weeks of vacation a year. So at least once a year, he would take like a solid 2 to 3 week vacation where he would just be off the air for like 3 weeks. And he would do that like twice a year. And then around the holidays, he'd be off for like 2 weeks. They would still provide a little bit of fresh content, even with Howard. So Howard would be away and Gary would be coming in and doing like a show with Artie, or whatever. So he found this way again, like it wasn't a bad value at first, but over time I was like, I'm getting irritated by everything, and not for nothing, but he's barely on the show anymore. Like He comes in, he talks. It's a commercial. I'm like, serious? I'm paying for a SiriusXM subscription, and I'm still hearing commercials.
The one thing I was going to ask, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. So to me, it feels like this change is because he's pandering to those people that you were talking about, that you would try to talk about the show and they weren't getting it. And they'll be like, so small percentage probably of people, by the way, that thought that. But it almost feels like he's almost pandering to those people in an attempt to win them over, or because he's like, oh, well, those people are right. I am a bad person. So now I need to go complete opposite direction to show them that I'm not a bad person. So I was curious if you guys thought it was similar or something like that, and if he has the self-awareness that this change that he made is just like not working, and it like, or if he's even aware of it, or if it's just kind of like something that he feels like he has to do because of what X pressure or whatever.
Like his movie, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but he starts with like he was a kid and he was like the only white kid in his neighborhood. And then he made a big thing of like, I don't belong and I never belong. But that's someone who always just wants to belong. So it's interesting that you say that.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Yeah.
The analogy I had in mind, it's so funny that you got right there, Mike, because the analogy I had in my mind is, Dave, it feels a lot like the nerd who finally got a chance to sit at the cool kids table. And all he had to do was decry everything that had gotten him cool enough to sit at the cool kids table and convert and say all the things that they said and stop making the jokes that the nerdy kids, thought were so funny that made him popular among them. It was like he got so popular among the nerds that even the cool kids started to notice. And then he got a chance to go to the cool kid table and he was like, absolutely. Absolutely. What do I have to sell? What do I have to do? What I have to say? Like you said, Mike, he just started saying the right things.
Regardless of what he does, I mean, I think you have to recognize his greatness for what he did for all those years, and he's a legend.
No question.
And I mean, whenever the Radio Hall of Fame, I'm sure it exists, he's got to be in it, right?
So the Radio Hall of Fame has been one of the. It's just so funny that this shit keeps coming up, because the Radio Hall of Fame was a whole thing he used to talk about all the time, because the Radio Hall of Fame is not really a thing. It was like somebody somewhere said, "Oh, we're creating the Radio Hall of Fame," and it's like just like a hallway with a couple plaques, and so every year, and so for years he wasn't in it, and it was somewhere in like the late 2010s that they approached him. We're like, we'd like to put you in the Radio Hall of Fame, and he's like, "What are you fucking kidding me?" He's like the Radio Hall of Fame should be just me. It should be just my picture, And it was true. It was like, it's so ridiculous. And there was a whole thing about it, because I guess at some point, whoever had been running it, and it was literally just some person who decided to create it for themselves. They had to move or something. He's, here's the Radio Hall of Fame, and it's like all been shoved into a box. It's like somebody moved. But yes, Dave, I mean, you're right. They did induct him, or at least they offered to induct him, and I think he was pretty much like, get the fuck out of here. It's just like,
he'd be on the
he will be
radio in Mount Rushmore or whatever, right? Like if you were going to make one.
100%. In the annals of history, when people talk about radio, they will talk about, to your point, Mike, I think you're right. Modern radio formats are largely based. And you know what, too? Probably a lot of TV shows, too. Because a lot of these, like the morning TV shows where they're talking about whether it's, sports or whatever, they're like half entertainment, half, but they're all basically like, hey, you're going to hang out with the crew and we're all sitting here talking. The idea is, you're sitting around with some friends shooting the shit, right? And that format is everywhere. So
we do.
Well, I mean, what are we doing? Exactly.
Right.
I mean,
we're
sitting here shooting the shit and recording it in case anybody actually cares to pay attention.